Well, tonight, Montana making national news as 10 million Americans are under threat of what could be a historic snowstorm. Winter storm alerts are up for much of the Northwest. Some areas could see up to 4 feet of snow this weekend. And Carter Evans is in Choteau, Montana, where people are bracing for what could be a storm for the ages.
Montana is no stranger to winter weather, but winter in September is rare.
This is pretty unusual for this time of year.
Micah Martin and his daughter are shoveling September snow in the town of Choteau, where there are already several inches on the ground.
I should have started earlier. By the time we're done shoveling, it's ready to go again.
Heavy snow fell across much of the state, downing trees and power lines. On the road, high winds blew snow sideways, causing whiteout conditions. The National Weather Service has issued winter storm watches and warnings for parts of Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming. By Monday, snow totals in the mountains will likely be measured in feet, and in communities at lower elevations.
When I got up this morning, I had this much snow in my car for my pickup.
Did they give you an idea how much to expect?
Well, the forecast said up to a foot.
Teton County Undersheriff Steve Jurdy is asking residents to stay indoors as conditions worsen.
So our biggest challenge for law enforcement would be any emergency situation, helping the ambulance, if there's a fire, or just getting places without the power being on.
The snow is forecast to keep falling like this through Sunday. If that happens, they could get at least 18 inches here in Choteau, perhaps a lot more. In the city of Great Falls, they're expecting a foot of snow, and that could come close to breaking a record set back in 1934. Carter Evans, CBS News, Choteau, Montana.
And turning now to more on weather with Rob Griggs. Montana making national news. It has been quite the storm so far.
Oh yeah, and it's not done yet. In fact, some of the heaviest snow could fall tonight through tomorrow morning. A couple of storm reports. We were talking about Choteau, 10 inches right now. Officially, the last check that we have, that's 10 inches of accumulation. But look at Browning, just under 2 feet. It's still coming down there. Great Falls, 5 inches of snow on the ground. Stanford, just to the east there of Great Falls, about 6 inches. As we look a little further east, Grass Range has 3 inches of snow. Melville, 5.3 inches of snow. That's, getting closer to town here. This winter storm has some concerns in terms of agriculture. Of course, we still have unharvested crops, especially up in the northeast. This is stress on livestock that's still out in pasture. For hunters and recreationists, hikers and so forth, might be a good weekend to sit it out. And we're also concerned about power outages from downed trees and down power lines in some of the areas most affected. Also, low visibility and snow and ice on the roads just makes for a very dicey weekend. So we'll have the complete weather picture for you and the forecast in just a minute. Zoe?
All right, thank you, Rob. Well, continuing the impact of the weather for more than a quarter century, Saturday Live has been held at Pioneer Park, and this year, weather forced the event indoors. Organizers decided early in the week to move Saturday Live to Skyview High School. With today's weather, they say they made the right decision. About 30 to 40 schools, some with several groups, came to Skyview. This is again the 27th year for Saturday Live, usually held at Pioneer Park. They use the cafeteria, 2 gyms, hallways, and the theater, and the Education Foundation of Billings says the change went smoothly.
The community has been awesome. So many people have stayed up late, gotten up early, pulled the strings to make this all work and come together. Cooperation has been phenomenal. A lot of these groups, this is the only fundraiser they do all year because it raises enough money that they don't have to do any more fundraisers throughout the whole year, and they can get it all done in one day.
The Education Foundation for the Billings Public Schools says the preliminary numbers show this year's Saturday Live raised about $55,000 for the students. Well, after an explosion injured 3 workers at an oil recycling plant in Webo back in 2012, the company and its former president have been held accountable in federal court. Q2's Mitch Laggy is standing by now with more on the federal court ruling. Mitch?
Well, Zoe, on Friday, a federal jury found Custom Carbon Processing, Inc. and Peter Margiotta guilty, charged with conspiracy and 2 violations of the Federal Clean Air Act. Margiotta now faces a maximum of 15 years in prison with a $250,000 fine. The company that owned the oil recycling plant, Custom Carbon Processing, Inc., also faces a $1 million fine. Prosecutors said Margiotta ignored repeated warnings from plant staff, saying that the plant was not safe. Margiotta allowed employees to accept natural gas condensate, a volatile flammable chemical used in oil recycling, also known as drip gas. The plant's foreman said that natural gas condensate wasn't doing what it was supposed to, instead creating a dangerous situation that could lead to an explosion. In December 2012, natural gas condensate vapors ignited, sparking a fire that injured 3 workers. Now, regarding that ruling, U.S. Attorney Kurt Almy said the conviction should send a message of compliance and that those found violating environmental regulations will be held accountable. Zoe?
All right, thank you, Mitch. Well, the Yellowstone Art Museum started back in 1964, and its success can be attributed to support from its members. Today, the museum hosted a membership appreciation. The museum is now featuring several exhibits, including photographs from Clyde Butcher and the North by Northwest exhibit. The event is also membership driven and gives a chance for a look behind the scenes. The American Alliance of Museums has accredited about 3% of museums nationwide, and the Yellowstone Art Museum is part of that and one of 7 in Montana, and a special place to its members. Now, history, tradition, and skill, it's all part of the Prairie Hand Spinners Fiber Fest today. The event was now in its 4th year, feeling some of the demand for those wanting to wear and work with wool. Fiber Fest shows the entire process of making clothes from the animal to spinning to the finished product. Today was a chance to learn about a craft that was once a big part of clothing. And the Prairie Hand Spinners meet once a month at the Yellowstone Art Museum's Visible Vault, and they work on several events throughout the year, including Summer Fair and the Threshing Bee in Huntley. Well, stay with us. More to come tonight on the 10 o'clock news. An invasive species closing in on the Montana border. After the break, we tell you how Montana prepares for the possible invasion in our weekly outdoor report. Later in sports, 2 wild winds for the Cats and Grizz. Full coverage from Bozeman in California on the way.
You're watching MTN News with Zoe Zandora, Storm Tracker weather with Rob Griggs, and sports with Casey Conlon. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.